What's up, guys? Welcome back to Country Bunkers Trains. Hope all is well. I've got some pretty big news to share today. Well, at least some pretty big news to me. I've been very hard at work the past several weeks here on the new O-gauge or O-scale layout, and we finally have a scene coming together. We've actually finally got a mountain here on the new layout. What do you guys say we jump right into it and take a peek at the new mountain? There she is, guys. Check that out. Isn't that looking good? I'm pleased with it. I'm quite tickled with how it's come out, especially for being my first go-around at this. As I've mentioned before on the channel, I'm not really one for scratch building or full-out model building. This just isn't really my cup of tea. I can't even begin to describe to you the amount of hours I have into this little section of the layout. Truth be told, hell, I myself don't want to know. I've spent a few hours on it each night and several hours on it over the past couple weekends over the last several weeks. And all that work and labor is finally starting to pay off. It's really coming to fruition. I think this thing is looking awesome. I'm sure there's people out there who could whip something like this up in a matter of a couple days, if that. However, like I say, I am not that person. This is a learning experience for me, and I'm taking my time. I'm not in a rush. And it's been a lot of fun making this creation, or this mountain, if you will. I've really enjoyed it, and I plan on continuing that along with the rest of this layout. One thing I really liked in our last update on the tunnel walls inside the tunnel, somebody mentioned we should call it Santa Fe Tunnel with the shelf of Santa Fe engines above it, and I like where that's going. I kind of dig that. I was thinking of calling this mountain Santa Fe Heights. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. The one thing I really like about this mountain and the job that it is performing is obviously with the shelf over here above the layout, we can't install a backdrop such as we can on the other side of the layout. Obviously, we just don't have the room. So that leaves the layout itself over here really having to tell the story or put on the show by itself. And I think this mountain is doing a great job of doing that. It really brings the layout to life. Even though I've been hitting this mountain really hard the past several weeks, really, this has been a work in progress over the past 3 or 4 months. Have had quite a bit of time lapse in between the different steps of building this. I know we've done several little updates and snippets throughout the past several videos on this mountain, but today I figured we'd do a quick recap and put it all together in one video for any of you who might be interested in how this mountain was built. One thing I want to mention before we get started, I am by no means a spokesman or sponsor of Woodland Scenics, but I'm thinking after doing this video, maybe I should be. Hey, if anybody from Woodland Scenics is watching or listening, I'm here. Get in touch with me. Seriously, though, about 80 to 90% of this mountain is built out of Woodland Scenics products. It's what I have available to me locally at my local train store, and I've always had great success with their stuff. I think they offer a really nice product, and as I say, I've always been real happy with it. It can be a little bit on the pricier side, but again, I think you get what you pay for. Once we got our elevations in place where we knew we wanted the mountain to be, the first step was building our tunnel portholes. These are built out of 3/4 inch insulation or styrofoam, and I took an X-Acto knife and carved in or cut in little bricks and cinder blocks to form the tunnel portholes. Of course, I painted these, which we'll go over here in just a few moments. Once these were finished, it was time to start building the skeleton, or the framework of the mountain. This was constructed out of strips of cardboard, hot glued together, and as you can see, it formed a really nice skeleton. Once this was all in place and dried and cured, I went over the skeleton with some plaster cloth. This gave us a nice surface to start building our mountain off of. The face of the mountain is constructed entirely out of rock molds. I picked up a few of these various rock molds from Woodland Scenics. Got some varying sizes. You can see we got some large ones, some medium ones, as well as some small ones. I also picked up some of their hydrocal plaster. This stuff is pretty fun and easy to work with. This mixes in a 2.5 to 1 ratio with water. Simply mix it, pour it in the molds, and within an hour or so you have a rock to work with. Like I say, pretty easy and straightforward. I spent a day or so prior to attaching them to the mountain building various rocks, or pouring various rocks, I should say. It is very easy to work with, but I do notice in these smaller molds, it's kind of hard to get them out of here. It does a good job, but when you're trying to pop out the rocks, these smaller ones want to break in half. But again, not to fret. They all get used up somewhere, and the smaller ones come in real handy in places where obviously a large rock wouldn't be able to fit. For attaching them to the plaster itself, I simply just used hot glue. Just hot glued them straight to the plaster, and this worked out quite well. Once all your rocks are attached to the mountain, you'll notice you get all these big unsightly cracks and gaps in between your various and different rocks. To fix this and fill these in, I use this joint compound, which I showed off in the last video. This stuff works excellent in filling all those cracks in and making everything look natural and authentic. I found the best way to apply it is simply using your finger. However, to get into the small areas and nooks and crannies where you simply can't fit your finger, these little spatulas that you find in like the dollar store paintbrush sets come in extremely handy. Use these to get into all those little nooks and crannies, and these did a really good job. But there's nothing replacing your finger. I mean, this this works really well, just applying it, trying not to get it on the rock molds themselves. You don't want to fill in all the fine details of the rocks you spent all that time making. But for filling in the cracks and whatnot, yeah, this worked excellent. And as I stated in the last video as well, I also use this stuff to go over all of the exposed plaster to fill in all the little pinholes and imperfections and whatnot. This gave us a real nice surface to paint to and apply our ground cover. This joint compound also serves another purpose as well. Along with filling in all the gaps, cracks, nooks, and crannies, this also serves as another adhesive, if you will. Kind of serves as a cement to cement everything together and make it all one piece. And like I say, you also use it as a glue. That hot glue, you'll notice when you're trying to glue these perfectly flat rocks, the backsides of them, to this very imperfect plaster surface, it's got all kinds of variations going in and out. I noticed with a couple of these rocks when I was filling in the cracks, the hot glue simply just couldn't hold. It let go. On a couple of those rocks where that happened, I simply took the rock down, got a big glob on the back side of the rock, and placed it back up on the hill. And this worked perfect for that. And as I say, it's just a perfect cement to cement everything together and make it one piece, nice, sturdy, and strong. Now, I did have to give this stuff several days to a week to fully dry and cure. This stuff is really intended to fix little nicks and gouges in sheetrock, where you're going to be using it in 1/8 inch to 3/16 inch depths. Here on this mountain, we probably filled in close to 1 inch spaced gaps in some areas, and this stuff just really isn't quite intended to do that. Obviously, yes, it works, but it takes a long, long time for it to fully dry in that manner. So after applying it in big batches like this, like I say, I gave it at least a week before I touched it. Hell, to be honest with you, I gave it even longer than that. But if you're doing this on your own, just a heads up, I would definitely give this a week to fully cure. Once our putty is dry, it's time to start painting, or I guess I should say applying washes. This entire spot on the layout, or diorama, if you will, is painted with these 5 simple colors. We got burnt sienna, burnt umber, Mars black, titanium white, and a cheap bright yellow. Our tunnel portholes, our bricks, are painted with the burnt sienna. I also went through and painted various bricks with the burnt umber to give it some variation and some depth. And all of our grays, of course, are made by mixing the black and white in different levels or variations. I also added a couple drops of the brown or the burnt umber to get rid of that bluish tinge that you get when mixing black and white. Our base coat on the mountain, or I guess I should say our base wash, is of course gray again, a different variation of black and white mixed to make it a different pigment or color than the cinder blocks over here on our tunnel portholes. I like working with everything wet. The base wash or coat of gray is pretty thick, but I add a little bit of water to thin it down to get into all the little nooks and crannies, make it easier to work with. Once that is fully dried and cured, I go over the whole thing with a black wash. I will say, personally, I would recommend a heavy black wash. I don't know how well the camera is going to show it. I started out over here, and I went pretty light, first time doing it, a little afraid of how I should go. But as you see, the more I went, the heavier with the wash that I got. And I noticed over here where I was real heavy with the black wash, I really like the way this turned out. It gave it a lot of depth and visual appearance. So personally, I would recommend a heavy black wash. Heavy on the paint, I guess I should say. But again, it's all one's taste and personal wants and needs. Once that our wash had fully dried and we were done with that, our next step, I took the burnt sienna and went over various spots. This was a really, really light wash, mostly water with a little bit of paint for a light pigment. Went over various spots. Once that was done, our next step was another wash of kind of like a brown mustard color, if you will. I took the bright yellow and mixed in some burnt umber to get that mustard color. Honestly, this was the most scariest one, I guess you could say, to apply, or nerve-wracking one. You're applying this really light color, so I got really nervous with it. But as you see, when it dries, it really goes into the rock and it looks very natural. I'm really glad I went with this step because it gives the rock some color and some variation and adds some different coloring in there. In the future, I might try and add some more somewhat light colors to the rocks because I think this is a really good effect. But like I say, it is pretty nerve-wracking when first applying it. You're thinking, what the hell am I doing? Once all of that had fully cured, our last step was applying our mud. This is the burnt umber. And this was a pretty fun, simple way to do this, at least the way I did it. On the tops of the mountains, of the rocks, whatever you want to call it, I took straight paint with a brush and just put heavy, heavy coats of straight paint up top. Once I got paint in areas, I washed the brush out, and then I would saturate it in water, and then I would just take the soaked brush of water and dab it on the top and let that wash run naturally down the side of the mountain. This gives a nice natural effect. Obviously, I think I went a little heavy on the mud over here versus this side, but then again, this has a lot more nooks and crannies over here and a heavier black wash. I think we'll be able to hide this better once we get some ground cover, some vegetation and whatnot. Still looks good in my opinion. And again, it's personal preference, personal taste. The last step for the mountain face itself, once our paints and washes had fully dried and cured, I took some of this Woodland Scenics blended turf and some glue and went along all the flat ledges and surfaces of the mountain and applied it. This is to simulate, moss or maybe grass growing on the flat areas of the mountain where it would in real life. And this really went the extra mile and really makes this mountain pop, in my opinion. This really gives it that realistic look that I'm going for. I am going to try in the future and come back and add some more vegetation to the mountain. Maybe come over here and add some vines and whatnot to help hide that little bit of extra mud that we have over here. Like I say, this is probably my favorite step. One of the last things I did but did not get any footage of was installing this little hill right here in front of the mountain. This was built out of that same insulation or styrofoam. I glued a few sections together, cut and carved it into a hill, and then I took that plaster cloth and went over that, and I got the same treatment. Put the putty over the plaster cloth, painted it brown, and of course it's got our ground cover on it. I do like the way this turned out. I'm doing this for a reason. I really like my first layout. I love the hell out of it. But one thing I do not like about it is it's pretty flat. We don't have any elevation or different heights anywhere. And I'm trying to add that to this new layout. I think this is really going to help the layout and give it that realistic look. We did stop here for a reason. We will continue on and go further, but we'll go over that here in just a moment. Our last accomplishment for the moment is actually the beginning stages of our ground cover, as you can see. Got our dirt installed. This is actually that Woodland Scenics fine brown ballast that I showed off briefly in the last video. And I really like this stuff. This stuff gives a really good effect of dirt. This is another layer or level that is taking a long time to dry. But I did use a hell of a lot of glue over here. I wanted to ensure that this was going to last for quite a while and not give me any issues in the future. I treated this stuff the exact same way I treat my ballast. I used school glue below this as the first layer. Then I poured this on, and then I used the Woodland Scenic cement on top of it. So this is taking a long time to dry. You can see in spots where it's darker, it's still, it's dry to the touch, but it's obviously not fully dried yet. But like I say, I think this is coming out really well. I've used 2 jars so far. I'm going to have to pick up more, obviously, to do the rest of the layout. But I really like the way this is looking. Did swing by my local train store this past weekend, Roundhouse South Trains. Picked up some more scenic supplies. Also got myself a new toy, as you can see. Got a static grass applier, the Static King. I'm really looking forward to trying this thing out, give it a go. Obviously got some static grass to go with it, along with some other stuff, some little flowers and whatnot. Aren't those cute? But yeah, I'm really itching to get going on this stuff. But I'm waiting on that dirt to fully dry and cure. It might take another day or so. I don't want to make a big gluey soup over here. Honestly, it's probably dry enough now. But I like to take a little bit of a break. I've been working on the layout so much. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, if that makes sense. So I'm probably just going to run some trains on the layout for the next week or so, and then we'll jump back on it. We did have some viewers interested in the last video on the tunnel walls. They were interested in asking what we were planning on doing with the top of the mountain, and we're actually still going to be installing another loop on this layout, an elevated line, and that's why we've stopped over here where we've stopped. The loop's going to come along, go above the mountain obviously, then I got to build a bridge when it comes out over here, and it's going to swing around and go back in, and the reason we've stopped here is obviously I still got to build that bridge. I don't know where the supports for that bridge are going to land. I don't want them to land on foam or something like that. I want them to land on the table or a nice sturdy place where I know they're going to be supported, not foam. So once we get that bridge in place and start doing that, we can continue on with our hills and whatnot. But like I say, until we get to that point, I just wanted to stop there. I know I'm safe there. I can install my supports out over here and not have to worry about running into stuff over here. I do want to play with the foam some more and maybe add some more small hills and whatnot up on top of the mountain once we get our track work placed. But I can't go too crazy because obviously we got our display shelf here and I still need to access it from the side. So I can't completely block that off or go too nuts in putting too much hill up there. But it is something I would like to add. I'm really liking the different elevations and whatnot here on the layout. I'm really looking forward to getting on the scenic work. I'm also planning on trying to build some trees. You guys know I'm a big fan of O-gauge trees. You can't have enough. But it's going to take very many trees to fill out this layout. So I'm going to try my hand at building some. Let me know in the comments below if this kind of stuff interests you guys. Would you like to see the scenic work performed next on the layout as well? I don't want to bore you guys if it's not something you guys are into, if you know what I mean. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick video on the O-scale mountain unveiling. If you did, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. And like I say, let me know in the comments below if you would like to see more videos on the scenery work of the layouts. I'd love to hear your feedback. But anyways, guys, until next time, my name is Zach, and this is Country Bunkers Trains. Y'all take care. I'll see you the next go-round.